is a Japanese second-generation believer, and we have been happily married since 2009. We also have a 6-year-old son whom we love very much. My parents-in-law, as well as my wife and I, all were matched by the now late Reverend Sun Myung-moon. The FFWPU has been a great source of meaning and comfort in my life, and I'm proud to be called a unificationist. My church has always been an inspiration for me to strive to become a source of positive change in my family and society. However, it has been painful seeing the Family Federation, which I regard like my family, being spoken of as an evil cult in newspapers and social media. I've been extremely fortunate to have found a workplace where people are tolerant and accepting of my faith, but I worry about other members who are not as fortunate as I am. I understand that the media's job is to report what is going on in the world. However, excessive and biased reporting can cause much more harm than good. I feel anger towards those who mock and slander my church, but I make it a point to pray for them and wish that they can find true happiness as well. Thank you very much.
I am Nancy Nishi, 71 years old and living in Japan for 30 years. My husband and I are parents of 5 married children. We have been members of Family Federation for World Peace and Unification for over 50 years. There are over 100,000 Family Federation members in Japan, a large number, and there are 40,000 second generation and thousands of third generation as well.
Hi, my name is Aika Callahan, and I'm an American living in Japan. I'm a proud second generation member of the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, or FFWPU for short. My husband is also a second generation member of FFWPU from Japan, and we came together through the marriage blessing where we committed to God to create a loving family for the purpose of bringing about a peaceful world. I'm currently involved in the youth group at my local church, taking care of middle school and high school students. I see firsthand how the negative portrayal of the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification in the media affects the youth of our community. Many of those who have already defined their faith do not allow the media to deter their beliefs, but those who are still learning about and growing their beliefs and faith can be influenced by the media to be scared or to stop exploring their faith and even begin thinking negatively about the community that they grew up in. One student in particular told me that FFWPU has been mentioned a couple times in their school by teachers, saying that FFWPU is evil and people should stop being associated with them. The student then shared with me, saying that they were scared to share their religious affiliation and vowed to never tell anyone for fear of being ostracized. The best I can do for students in my youth group is to encourage them to be confident in themselves and what they believe, but at such a young age, the opinions of society can be very influential. Of course, each person is free to choose what they believe, but what the media has done is take away that opportunity to explore these teachings and faith for themselves. Japan supports the freedom of religion currently, but if the dissolution of FFWPU becomes a reality, we lose that freedom to express our own religion. I hope that Japan can reconsider dissolving FFWPU and the US can support the freedom of religion of those living in Japan. Thank you.
I'm a bit worried about my younger children as well, that when they find out about the ways that our church is being viewed in society, how can I guide them to uphold the wonderful values that I cherish of our church? Will we have to go seek a different country? Because in Japan, if the public is taught to have disgust towards a certain people, and that it is okay, it is justified to bully these people or to reject these people, then that might happen. And it is happening already. I am asking for help, swift help from the international religious community, that they can clear the name of the Unification Church, that we are good people, not to be feared. We are not a danger to society, and very much the contrary. Such good help and wonderful, we are very wonderful for society.
じゃあ日本語で、はい。私は、私も親が信仰を持って、生まれたいわゆる祝福2世で、私自身は今、カープという、家庭連合の友好団体の職員をさせていただいてます。私もこの報道を受けて、特にその私が関わりを持っているこの2世の大学生たちが企画していたイベントだったりが、報道の影響で中止せざるを得なくなったりとか、そういうことを受けて、すごく悔しかったですし、あと道を歩いていても道端で全く知らない小学生の男の子たちがなんかニュースの報道を報道を見ながら統一教会やべえとか言ってるのを見て、無性にちょっと腹が立ったり、あとはその、Google マップで自分の通っている教会の名前が書き換えられていて、カルト教会というふうに書き換えられていて、こんなことを平気でできるんだなと。正直この日本人はだんだんとその、家庭連合を受け入れてくれてると、少しずつそうなっていってると思っていたんですけど、まだまだこんなに宗教に対して偏見があって、また我々のことを敵視するんだなというのがすごく悲しく思いました。はい、1分ぐらいですよね。以上です。
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our hosts, President of Universal Peace Federation, Dr. Michael Jenkins, and Chairman of the Washington Times, Mr. Thomas McDevitt, along with IRF Summit co-chairs, Katrina Lantos-Sweat and Ambassador Sam Brownback.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're honored to be here with you at the IRF 2024 Summit. We're also very happy to be with Ambassador Brownback and Dr. Katrina Lantos-Sweat, that is leading the most significant global movement to lift up religious freedom worldwide. On behalf of our founder of the Washington Times Foundation and the Universal Peace Federation, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, we want to thank you and all of your organizations for the work you're doing. We want to support and partner with everyone from every nation and every religion. May God bless you all.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. I want to first raise congratulations to my good friend, Dr. Michael Jenkins, the UPF organization, and the Times Foundation for hosting this session and for all the work they've done in the session throughout the last couple days. And second, and most important, congratulations to Ambassador Brownback and Dr. Katrina Lantos-Sweat. I was so moved by the content that was shared over the past 2 days, the sense of resilience, the need to find the space to find your soul in terms of religious freedom. I think the content that you've shared is cutting edge, and the world needs to know it, as you said in the final remarks, to connect and distribute this material. So we're very glad to be here and welcome all of you for lunch, and thank you for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tom and Dr. Jenkins. We simply could not do the summit without your support. You have been the indispensable partner, and we are more grateful than we can say. And you don't simply show up with sort of resources to help us create this summit, but you have a deep commitment to the underlying cause, and that is evident in everything you do. So we are enormously grateful. We're very excited about this luncheon, and we thank you all for being here, and thank you for being the best partners we could possibly have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And let me add my congratulations as well, as my voice continues to fade. Dr. Jenkins has done a great job as a partner in building the program and has really been an intricate part of this. And the Washington Times has covered this beautifully, which really helps the distribution of getting the information out. So they have been a fabulous partner with this, and they feel the need for it. They know the need for it. They experience the need for it. So it's really a passion built out of an experience that they're going, look, we've got to push back against this, and they're joining us and helping us with it, and we deeply appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
IRF
Enjoy your
Summit
lunch.
2024.
To offer a benediction, please welcome the founder of Connect Point Christian Church in Georgia, Dr. Mark Abernathy.
Let's all pray. Dear God, we come together today at this International Religious Freedom Summit 2024 to seek your blessing and favor for religious freedom for every faith, every community, and every nation, all the time. We're so grateful for the leaders that you have assembled here from organizations throughout the world to cooperate together in advance of religious freedoms and all the freedoms that follow from that. We thank you for the leadership of this conference and for all the efforts being made here to allow all faiths to stand before you together as one family under God. In your name we pray, amen.
As we meet today, the religious freedoms of millions of believers are being violated globally, from Asia to Africa, in Europe and the Americas. People of faith need and deserve widespread support to preserve this vital human right to worship as they choose. In our polarized world, extremist ideologies and totalitarian regimes threaten freedom of religion and thought. Autocrats insist that the state must be the ultimate authority. Therefore, they will not tolerate belief in a higher power. As we know from the Cold War era, communism and other extreme movements lead to the denial of religious freedom and most other human rights. What happens when religious freedom and freedom of conscience are denied? History shows that when people of faith are denied their God-given right of religious freedom, they suffer persecution, violence, and even genocide. Despite this grim reality, there is hope. Many are standing up for religious liberty around the world. With the support and efforts made by the IRF Summit partners and the faith communities of the world, the United States, the United Nations, and all free nations can fulfill their most critical role to advance, protect, and defend religious freedom. That's why the Washington Times Foundation and the Universal Peace Federation are honored to join in education and action together with all partners of the International Religious Freedom Summit, co-chaired by Ambassador Sam Brownback and Dr. Katrina Lantos Sweat. The Washington Times Foundation is an educational organization that promotes freedom, faith, and family. The Washington Times has also brought great attention to this important cause. Religious freedom is the bedrock for all freedoms. As a result, a global resolution was introduced in support of religious freedom for all and entitled Declaration in Support of Fundamental Human Rights and Human Dignity, Overcoming Threats to Freedom of Thought, Conscience, and Religion. Dozens of courageous scholars, journalists, and prominent figures from many faiths and cultures spoke against persecution and intolerance.
Freedom of religion is freedom of thought. and is an essential foundation of democracy alongside the freedoms of speech and assembly.
I'm deeply grateful to the Universal Peace Federation and to the Washington Times Foundation for convening these summits where peace can be pursued. I also want to sincerely commend Dr. Moon for her leadership and for her lifelong commitment to peace. Dr. Moon and her husband have been unwavering in their efforts against communism, which denies God and oppresses the faithful.
Freedom of religion can never be taken for granted. It must always be defended and looked after.
Our hope is in God and the cooperation of all people.
Faith is beyond even the most repressive government's ability to push back against. It can't be destroyed by tyrannical fiat or communist persecution. Any government that denies religious freedom is destined to fall. Every day we must also stand together against the clear threats to this fundamental right. And there is no greater threat today than that which is posed by communism. We see this playing out in Japan as well, as Speaker Newt Gingrich wrote about recently. In the wake of the tragic assassination of my friend Prime Minister Abe, the Japanese Communist Party has been attacking the Unification Church. The JCP has alleged that the church is engaged in corruption and is a threat to society, and that it undermines Japan's interest. Nothing could be further from the truth. The church, founded by Reverend Moon, has long stood against communism and has always championed stronger ties between Japan, Korea, and the United States of America. If there is anything the Unification Church undermines, it indeed is communism. We should see the JCP's attack for exactly what it is, an attempt to undermine and weaken the vital U.S.-Japan alliance. None of us can allow this to happen. America and other free, democratic, and God-affirming nations must set the example. The surest way we can achieve this is by being steadfast champions of religious freedom and religious liberty. I'm grateful that this is the chief purpose of your summit. I encourage you all to keep up the fight.
To protect religious freedom, we need to uphold common universal values. Religious freedom is the universally shared value embraced by all faiths and people of conscience. Because we have come together as partners at this historic summit, we can and will roll back the persecution of all faiths. We will make sure all nations respect the freedom of all faiths. Let us work together to achieve lasting religious freedom throughout the world.
The Family Federation for World Peace, formerly the Unification Church, is undergoing persecution by the government of Japan and is under threat of being dissolved, despite there being no violation of criminal law. We invite you to watch this brief video, which explains the church's situation in Japan.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Tatsu Nakayama, Japanese lawyer. I'm highly honored to be given this precious opportunity to speak at IRF Summit. I have been representing Family Federation, though I'm not a believer, since the assassination of ex-Prime Minister Abe. With my experience, I learned a lot, and today I'm going to share with you why the Family Federation in Japan should not be dissolved in 3 points. Number 1, political fight, which is going beneath the legal issues pending in Japan. Number 2, deprogramming, which is also hidden underneath. And number point 3, I will conclude that there should be no requirement for dissolution of the Family Federation. Point number 1, political and ideological fight has been ongoing in Japan from way back before. In 1978, Japan Communist Party declared war on anti-communist unification church. Evidencing this, couple of months after Abe assassination, when commented by a famous journalist that, oh, this conflict should be a final war against the unification church. Then, in response to this, Communist Party chairperson Kazuo Oshii admitted that final war and added that this time we will do whatever it takes until we get it done. With such strong words, left-wing parties have been aggressively fought against family federation. And along with this political movement, in Japan, left-wing lawyers have been very aggressive and very influential among mass media and also the Japanese government. They are anti-religious, many are communist, and started a dissolution campaign in 1987, meaning in order to dissolve family federation, Japanese family federation, we will do whatever. And they worked with notorious deprogrammers who deprogrammed, as you may not believe, as many as 4,300 poor family federation believers and broke the faith of many. Top two gentlemen of these left-wing lawyers are Hiroshi Yamaguchi in the left and Masaki Kito, current leader, in the right. They are lawyers, but they could be called as political figures or political activists because they even knew that at the time of the commencement of this political fight, there were no victims, meaning even though there are no legal victims, they continued to argue to create victims and made many lawsuits for refund of donations made by believers representing apostates. Despite such political campaign, as a lawyer, legally speaking, I do not think there is a requirement for dissolution because in Japan, the legal requirement for dissolution of the religious corporation is very high. Article 81 of the Religious Corporation Act says religious corporations can be dissolved only if they commit an act which is clearly found to harm public welfare extremely, which is very high criteria, and that in violation of laws and regulations. Laws in red here has been debated so much after Abe assassination because, according to case laws in Japan, laws here have been limited to only criminal laws, which means in order to dissolve religious corporation, criminal law must be broken. On the other hand, in the present case of family federation, since its foundation about 60 years ago, no criminal law has been broken, which means there is no legal reason to dissolve family federation. Indeed, our Prime Minister Kishida admitted that case law and said at the Diet on October 18, 2022, he said only criminal laws should be included, which means at that time the government did not intend to file a dissolution suit against family federation. However, very surprisingly, and very strangely enough, he did 180. He changed his mind completely in one single night and said the next day that civil laws can be included, which means that civil lawsuits filed against family federation and they lost some, which could be another reason for dissolution of the federation, which became a start to proceed for dissolution suit of the federation. However, legally speaking, many of such lawsuits against family federation, we see puppet connections. We can call it post-puppet lawsuits. What happened is like this. The programmers in consultation with left-wing lawyers, deprogrammed as many as 4,000 plus believers, and they forced the poor believer to file a lawsuit against Family Federation for donation refund, saying like this: unless you file a lawsuit, we continue to take you as mind controlled by Family Federation. So do file an action against Family Federation, otherwise we will continue to confine you, imprison you for deprogramming. And in order to make money for legal fee, left-wing lawyers continued this circle as an ecosystem. This ecosystem we can find in graph here. Red line here, number of 4,000 deprogrammings came to a peak after Communist Party's declaration of war against the Unification Church and left-wing lawyers' political campaign. What follows is blue line here, number of lawsuits filed against Family Federation. From this visible, intimate correlation between red and blue, you can note many of the lawsuits against Family Federation are made or are forced as puppet using deprogrammings. This correlation came to an end in 2015 when Mr. Toru Goto, skinny gentleman here, who suffered very long time, 12 years confinement, and who filed a lawsuit against deprogrammer and won a victory at the Supreme Court of Japan. Indeed, very unfortunately, such forced puppet lawsuits caused dissolution suit pending in Japan. Historically speaking, deprogramming lasted 50 years in Japan, and some of them are made for forced puppet lawsuits, which could be one of the main reasons for the dissolution suit pending in Japan. But after a careful legal analysis, we found that more than half, 55% of the plaintiffs are poor deprogrammed victims. With this in mind, I don't believe Family Federation should be dissolved. I will wrap up in one page. What is going now in Japan is a dissolution suit against Family Federation. Main reason is many lawsuits filed against Family Federation initiated by left-wing lawyers. But what lies underneath is another framework B, which is 4,000 unhumane deprogramming. Indeed, Japan has rejected dissolution so many times, demanding left-wing lawyers requested for dissolution of Family Federation to the government many times. 30 years ago, government rejected 2 times, and recently, Tokyo District Court also rejected to dissolve the Family Federation. And in the course of this, Family Federation issued a declaration of compliance intended to improve their internal operation, which actually worked. Evidencing this, in this recent 7 years, no single lawsuit has been filed against Family Federation. With this, I hope you will be convinced that there is no requirement for dissolution. I will conclude in one page. Family Federation in Japan has not committed any crimes in the 60 years. Indeed, lost in some civil lawsuits for refund donation, but half of the plaintiffs were deprogrammed, and that they improved compliance recently in these 15 years. Thank you for your attention. Most of what I shared is written in my booklet published last year in Japan, and English translation of which you can find in Bitter Winter. Thank you again. Lastly, I strongly hope that with the kind attention and kind support of you, distinguished guests and honorable minds at IRF Summit, religious freedom of Japan should be protected at any cost. Thank you very much.
Please welcome a victim of the persecution of the Family Federation in Japan, Mr. Luke Higuchi.
Good afternoon. My name is Luke Higuchi from Japan. I am a victim of kidnapping and confinement. I would like to tell my story. You cannot believe religious violations taking place in the modern democratic country of Japan. Unfortunately, it is true. I am representative of over 4,300 victims in Japan. In 1988, when I returned home, my parents and relatives were waiting. They grabbed my arm and put me into the van and drove me to the unknown place. I slept in the van because the sleeping pill was inside the meal. When I woke up, I was in the mental hospital, solitary confinement. There was only bed and toilet. It was dark and humid and smelly. I was terrible situations, and I was so scared because I didn't know when I could get out of hospital. The programmer and organized communist organizations manipulated my parents. Not only my parents, but also the parents of 4,300 victims. I am warning that Japan is in the crisis of religious freedom. The government is persecuting religious minority. The Japanese government is manipulated by the same organizations which manipulated my parents. Japan is beginning invaded by communism. If Japan's freedom is gone, Taiwan's and Korea's freedom will be gone. An Asia community created centered on the communism will be created. Thank you for listening, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Please welcome President of the Women's Federation for World Peace International, Mrs. Moriko Hori.
No good deed goes unpunished. This phrase expresses the exact situation of our organization, Women's Federation for World Peace Japan. Ladies and gentlemen, I am the president of the Women's Federation for World Peace Japan and International. I'm a second-generation believer in the faith of Family Federation. My parents were leaders of our church, so they devoted much time to its activities. I am happily married and a proud mother of 2 children. My husband is also a second generation of our religious community. Women's Federation for World Peace is a faith-based organization and we're UN NGO with the consultative status with ECOSOC UN. And we also a worldwide organization with chapters in 128 countries. Our organization was awarded the highest honor from the Japanese Foreign Ministry in 2019, given for service by a Japanese volunteer to children in Mozambique, Africa. We came to the attention of the Foreign Ministry because the Japanese embassy in Mozambique recommended our organization, and Mrs. Hosen, the school teacher, received the award from the ministry in Tokyo. However, due to the sudden persecution by the Japanese government on Family Federation, the lawyers group, and the newspapers, our service project was crushed. The parliamentarian of Japanese Communist Party, Keiji Kokuta, continually attacked the foreign ministry for giving us that award. Due to the relentless harassment, the foreign minister decided to publicly rescind the award, even though we had done nothing wrong. Now we lost 2,000 paying members due to the negative reputation created by the media. Our projects are in crisis, which directly threaten the lives of 20,000 women and children. For 30 years, our volunteers dedicate their lives to support more than 400,000 women and children in many developing countries. Their own reputation and dignity were damaged when Japanese Communist Party and their affiliated lawyers attacked our projects just because Women's Federation and Family Federation have the same founder in Dr. Hak Ja-han Moon. Religious freedom leaders, something terrible is happening in Japan. We ask you to help us correct this insanity and injustice in Japan. Thank you so much.
Please welcome the 50th Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, the Honorable Newt Gingrich.
I'm very honored to address this prestigious International Religious Freedom Summit 2024 and the luncheon hosted by the Washington Times Foundation and the Universal Peace Federation. I remember fondly being with you a year ago. I want to thank Ambassador Sam Brownback and Dr. Katrina Lantos Sweat as the co-chairs of this Religious Freedom Summit. Both of you have already had tremendous careers. You provided real leadership, and I know when Callista was ambassador to the Vatican, we worked very closely with Ambassador Brownback on issues of religious freedom. I can't tell you how important I think it is that we recognize the threat all around the world to religious liberty. As we see people killed in places in Africa, in India, as we see repression in China. But particularly today, this particular luncheon, helping Japan overcome its religious freedom crisis, is very timely and very important. I've been working a great deal on the issue of what's happening in Japan, and it's really very shocking and very surprising. The Japanese had a long tradition since World War II of honoring religious liberty, of enforcing the rule of law, and of respecting the conscience of individuals. And yet now there's a real effort to dissolve the Family Federation, which was really founded in order to fight communism and to provide an opportunity for religious belief. The government now has spent over a year in deep investigations, and after that year of investigations, they've not found a single crime that justifies going after the Family Federation. But the political pressures and the dishonesty of the Communist Party of Japan and the dishonesty of the lawyers who made a living out of some 20 years of attacking the Unification Church and then the Family Federation, all of those risk overriding the rule of law. You know, when the Prime Minister announced on October 18th that the Unification Church could not be dissolved because there's no breaking of a criminal law, I sort of began to relax. Yet the very next day, he said, maybe we can use civil settlement cases to try to dissolve them. Now, there's no provision for civil settlement to be a cause for dissolving. It has to be criminal, and the Prime Minister himself has admitted that there is no such criminal case. My team did a lot of research on this, and we take it very seriously. As many of you know, my wife, Callista, was ambassador to the Vatican. She has taken on religious liberty around the world as one of her major projects. What we discovered was that the dissolution effort was really started by the Japanese Communist Party, which as early as 1978 began attacking the Unification Church because the church's God-affirming message was directly contrary to the atheistic beliefs of the Japanese Communist Party, to end free speech and to end freedom of religion. Unfortunately, some elements of the media have joined in and at times have been, I think, very, very biased, something we also understand here in the United States. But there was a brilliant article in Real Clear Politics that Ambassador Suzanne Johnson Cook and Dr. Katrina Lantos Sweat wrote that explained that this is a very alarming moment for all of us who believe in religious liberty, because Japan is one of our greatest allies. It's been a bulwark in the Far East of standing for freedom, for the rule of law, and for constitutional behavior. And that's why I think so many of us are now engaged in real concern for the future of Japan. Everything that Callista and I have done, working with the Family Federation and its various associates, working with the Universal Peace Federation, and working with the Washington Times, have been aimed at promoting the value of faith for all communities. I've been astonished to be in meetings where literally people from over 100 countries, representing virtually every religion on the planet, come together peacefully to share their mutual right to approach God on their own terms. I believe this is central to the whole cause of freedom. The core value of being able to approach God without interference really underlies all freedom. A government which can block you from approaching God can block you from anything. I'm calling on Ambassador Rashad Hussain, the IRF ambassador at large, to continue the good attention he's already given this issue, to alert Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and to shine a very bright light on Japan. We have to make sure that the Japanese government understands that this is a key test of the future of Japan, a key test of the future of religious liberty, and that to close down an organization as a deliberately political act of retribution is a profound undermining of the very basis of freedom. And I so much appreciate all of you being involved in this important cause.
Please welcome moderator, opinion editor of the Washington Times, Charlie Hurt, along with panelists, Summit co-chair Katrina Lantos Sweat, director of Brigham Young University's International Center for Law and Religion Studies, Professor Cole Durham, from the IRF Summit Goal Leadership Council, Dr. Jan Figel, editor-in-chief Bitter Winter, Massimo Introvine, and former ambassador at large for international religious freedom at the State Department, Ambassador Susan Johnson Cook.
There we go. Okay, have a seat. It's great to be here. I'm, as the voice of God just told you, I'm Charlie Hurt, and I'm delighted to be here. I'm glad you all are here. We have we spent a lot of time talking about our rights in this country, which is one of the great things about America. We really like to talk about our rights. It's hard to imagine something more important than our First Amendment rights to say what we want to say, or our Second Amendment rights to protect ourselves and our families, but there is no right more important than religious liberty. Religious liberty is the right that protects our soul. It's the right to believe, not what we want to believe, but to believe what we believe. And everything else is in service of that. And so we have a very distinguished gathering here. I wish that we had, I wish we had 5 hours. We could do an hour with each one of these people, but we are going to make this briefer than that. And you get to eat while we do it. So you're really winning here in the efficiency department. I would like to start with you, Professor Durham, if you don't mind, giving us a sort of big picture state of play when it comes to religious liberty in the world, but specifically in Japan today.
Okay, well, many of the other people that you've listened to are talking more about the specifics of what's going on with the Family Federation. But let me give you, in a very short form, the big picture of how religious freedom applies in this context. I've been working over the past 30 years in academic settings, but also in international and national legal contexts. And I've been actively involved in affirming the right to legal entity status. I often tell my students this is something that no TV shows are ever made about. It's not romantic, but it's existential and literally for religious communities. So the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and belief is anchored, as we all know, in the Universal Federation, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the right to freedom in the internal forum, that is what we believe is actually internal forum that is absolute and is not subject to being restricted. But it's well known that the right to manifest or exercise religion or belief can be limited, but only on carefully restricted conditions, including compliance with the rule of law, non-discrimination, and assurance that any limitations are strictly proportional and necessary. In a course would spend 5 hours on that.
Yes, exactly.
So I won't do that here.
It's a tall task I'm asking.
But we tend to think of freedom of religion or belief as a matter of individual rights, which it surely is, but by its nature, religion almost always has a communal dimension. Individual belief would be largely empty if deprived of its communal roots and of the ability of religious communities to give content, structure, and a protective home to individual belief. Religious communities and structures antedate history. States as we now know them arise in contexts which are antedated by prior religious communities and religious commitments. The specific structures of religion and state relations are heavily dependent on history, but it's now well settled as a matter of international law that freedom of religion or belief necessarily entails the right of religious communities to autonomy in their own affairs. All major legal sources recognize that the autonomous existence of religious or belief communities is indispensable for pluralism in a democratic society. In modern legal settings, this includes the right to legal entity status. In legal systems that grant benefits such as tax-exempt status, refusal to grant the requisite status and comparable benefits constitutes impermissible religious discrimination. You would love this if you're a lawyer and you like footnotes. I've got footnotes for all these points.
We don't need to go into the footnotes, but you've touched on a lot of important things here.
This is, so basically, let me just, in modern societies, it's not practical to function without legal entities. And if there is wrongful conduct, the individual perpetrators should be sanctioned, but an entire religious community should not be shut down or crippled, denying the benefits of the religion to all its believers just because of some individual cases of malfeasance, especially where the community itself, as you've seen, has taken affirmative action and effective steps to cure any problems.
So, Professor, I want to, that's a great stopping point for a minute here. I would like to talk about also the larger issue of the threats to religious freedom. And we're joined here by Dr. Sweat, who I was telling her backstage, to me, she's anti-communism royalty to me. You all know her father, the great Tom Lantos, who is a member of Congress and fought to his dying breath against communism. And I wish that you would, with some specificity about Japan, tell us how you see this fight going today.
Well, you know, Professor Durham is one of the world's foremost experts on the legalities and the substance of this matter. But if I may, I'm going to talk about what Japan is doing at a more visceral level. You all remember the expression, friends don't let friends drive drunk. Right now, Japan is in the process of getting into the car drunk when it comes to their treatment of the community we are here to recognize and honor today. It is not okay to engage in collective punishment. It is not okay to target a particular faith community. It is not okay to use the instrumentalities of power and the instrumentalities of a sort of press that is engaging in a pattern of defamatory and slanderous coverage to otherize, to marginalize, and to make an easy picking for state abuse. So I overheard the comments, the wonderful video of Speaker Gingrich when he talked about Japan for a long time being a beacon of democracy and human rights in a part of the world where that has not always been the case. We honor that. We respect that. Japan is a friend, but friends don't let friends drive drunk. And
Amen.
That's what they're starting to do.
Amen. Amen. Dr. Fiegel, and before we listened to some of the testimony from victims of communism, and few people alive have a more truly visceral connection to the threats of communism, in particular to religious freedom, than you do. You've worked around the world to save people from communism. How do you see the lay of the land today?
Yeah. Thank you, Charlie, not only for patience as a moderator with us, but I especially want to say thanks for this audience, because there are many people, which is a good sign, because the answer to the situation and problems we discuss, not only in Japan but elsewhere, is solidarity. Awareness, solidarity in action, in position, in whatever we can do. And that's my source of optimism being here again, because a year ago it was not so easy to raise Japanese question. Now it's at the stage. Many important people speak about it. And I think your point is on totalitarian issue, because actually I lived half of my life under communism. Communism used violence and lies to dominate. Mm-hmm. And to get rid is not so easy, but I see this pattern also in Japanese case, because dissolution of the church, unification church, has a story of half century. It's repetition each decade from Japan Communist Party and the leftist lawyers. And we get to the point which is really very dangerous. Communists elsewhere for century-long history showed total animosity against religious freedom, because religious people are free people. They don't obey any authority, and therefore it is important to notify that the similar and of course vast problems with religious freedom in the region are in North Korea, in China, and Japan is at the crossroad. It's important that messages from here are given them, because this country is democratic, can use all democratic means to protect religious freedom for all. And as you said, it's primary freedom. I would add that religious freedom is a litmus test of all human rights, because if this is not respected, which is the most inner freedom, freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, spirituality, then freedom of press, of opinion, of assembly, of association, surely will be limited or oppressed or violated. Therefore, it is important that we discuss it today here and that our appeal will be listened in Tokyo and in Japan.
Marvelous. You know, I think I can speak on behalf of Americans. You know, so much of our history and our worldview sort of looks towards Europe. And so we sort of ignore, Ambassador Cook, we ignore sort of the plight in the Pacific that is very similar to, you know, Dr. Fiegel's experience in the former Czechoslovakia. But it's just as important.
It's very important, and to that point, we cannot ignore it. You know, Katrina talked about friends, and we're friends of every faith. They don't have to be our faith, but religious freedom means we are friends and we protect. That was the key word of the professor. We're going to protect it. That's what the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says. We protect it. And one of the tools we can use is what Katrina and I did was an op-ed piece so that we could get the mainstream media to focus attention on it, which brings attention to governments. And one of the things we had as USERF chair and as ambassador was that we have the ear of our government, but we want to make sure we have the ears and the eyes of other governments to help protect our friends. And I know we're close in time, so I'm going to wrap it up and let our last speaker
Wow,
have
that
a
was
chance.
magical. Your ability to do that in such a short period of time. Dr. Intravigne, what do you see as we go forward? What is the best way to combat this evil and protect the individual rights of people in following their faith?
Thanks. We should understand three things. First, it's not about taxes. If the Family Federation is dissolved, it will not only lose its tax exemption, it will lose its places of worship, assets, everything. It will be a death sentence. Second, it is not about the Family Federation only. Laws have been passed limiting in Japan the freedom of all religion to collect donations and pass the faith to their children. The Jehovah's Witnesses right now are already under attack. And third, it is not about Japan only. We have evidence of continuous contacts at the private and governmental level between Japan and France, which in these very days is trying to make its bad law against cults worse. So it is not only dissolution of the Family Federation will not only affect the Family Federation in Japan, it will affect dozens of religions in dozens of countries.
Awesome.
Well, yes, exactly. And I want to thank each of you all. As I said, you can see now, we could do this in 5 hours, actually. I would like to delve into all of this with each of these speakers. But I think it's, and I'm getting the wrap here on our clock, but I would like to just sort of, I think, sum up for a second that, you know, the reason communism despises freedom of religion is because it despises the individual, and it must snuff out the individual for the collective, and it has to punish people and reward people as collective, and because communism sees no other way. But as you point out, you do not have any freedom if your soul is not free.
Yes.
And that's why they cannot stand God, and they cannot stand the individual, and they want to destroy your soul. Thank you all very much for on your part for fighting this good fight, but especially thank each of you all for all you do to fight this fight in which the future of humanity is literally in the balance.
And thank you for your moderating.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure. Thank you all.
As we are getting ready for the next event on our program, I'd like to ask Dr. Jenkins and Ambassador Brownback to join me outside as they are bringing forward the declaration that will be signed. and clearing the stage. So please bear with us for just a minute while we prepare for the remainder of the program. And thank you for listening to what I thought was a really well-done panel, considering we had such a brief time, but you sort of got a smorgasbord of really powerful insights. And one of the things that Professor Introvigne said, which I think is really important for us to remember throughout this IRF Summit, is it's never just about one community. When the Family Federation is targeted in Japan, it means that others are next in line. And that's why the solidarity and the unity that we bring to this fight is really critical to its success. So if I could have Dr. Jenkins and Ambassador Brownback join me out here now.
This has been a good luncheon. This has been a great program, and this is really a key issue. We don't confront oftentimes the issues of religious persecution in democracies, but it exists. And oftentimes it's an effort to suffocate religious freedom or to suffocate a group. And we've got to stop that, and we've got to stand against those as well and speak up on those issues as well. So I think this is a very substantive time for us to address these in this situation, and that's why we've got this pledges up here that a number of us will sign. And I think we need to move forward and push forward on these causes and support people that get persecuted, even in a democratic society. We need to stand up for those. So it's a pleasure to be here. Dr. Jenkins, it's a pleasure to be able to be a part of this. And thank you guys for fighting the fight.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Brownback, Ambassador Sam Brownback, Senator Brownback. We've known you for years as our leader, and Dr. Katrina Lantos Sweat. And we are very honored to really have this program called Helping Japan Overcome Its Religious Freedom Crisis, to encourage all of us to sign a declaration for human rights and human dignity. We would like to ask Congressman Dan Burton and his wife to come forward to encourage us to join in globally this signing of a declaration. Congressman Burton.
Thank you, Mike. You know, I've been to a lot of these functions over the years I've been in Congress. I've never heard anything explained so thoroughly and so well as what we've heard today about freedom of religion and the freedom of human rights. And so I hope all of you today will take a look at what you have on your table. And it's like this palette, this sign that we have up here on the stage, which will be symbolically signed in a few moments, which calls for the end of repression, violation of human rights, and human dignity. And we hope all of you will take a look at that and sign it today. There's one particular part of the declaration I'd like to read to you, because I hope all of us will take this to heart and take it to all of our friends around the world. We call for an end to persecution and oppression through the means such as unfairly initiating the right of inquiry for the dissolution of the religious entity and ignoring the freedom of religion mentioned in the Constitution of Japan. And I hope that all of you will sign this, and I hope this message goes to the Japanese government, the Diet, very clearly. We want freedom of religion and human rights in Japan.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Burton. At this time, we'd like to ask Ambassador Brownback, Ambassador Susan Johnson-Cook, and Dr. Katrina Lantos Sweat, and Mr. Kajakuri, Chairman of UPF in Japan, to do a signing on behalf of all of us. The pens are at the bottom of the board.
Susan, go ahead.
Only those four representatives will sign symbolically, representing all of us. Dr. Kajakuri, Chairman of UPF in Japan. Dr. Katrina Lantos Sweat, Co-Chairman of the International Religious Freedom Summit, 2 times Chairman of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. And I'd like to ask Damian Dunkley to come forward and sign. And finally, Mrs. Horry. Damian Dunkley's the chairman of the Family Federation for USA. And Mrs. Horry's the president of Women's Federation for World Peace. And now I'd like to ask Dr. Katrina if you could come to the side of the declaration, and Ambassador Brownback, if you could come to the other side. Dr. Cook, you can join him, and Mrs. Horry. And then also, we'll kind of line up right here to make a straight line for our finale. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We pray for your faith, your nation, your community, and for religious freedom for everyone, everywhere, all the time. Thank you, IRF Summit 2024. Give yourselves a congratulations for being here to commit to freedom, religious freedom for all. Thank you.
Please exit the ballroom so we can begin preparations for the next event.